So, welcome to the Adult Share podcast, Michelle Clare.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me today.
I love that you're a double L too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the way to go.
It is the way to go, double L's. So nice to meet you. And I'm so excited for our conversation. This will be
Oh,
a good
I
one.
am too. I'm excited to meet you. And I know that this is just going to help people along their path and along their journey to really get to the point where they're able to live their best life.
That is what we're all about here in the Adult Chair. So I'm excited to hear how you can help the audience today do that, exactly that. So let's dive right in. Um, so you are someone that I'm not even sure where I want to start. Do we want to talk about being a medium or I think I want to start with near-death experiences. I want to hear your life story because you didn't you weren't born this way, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you that are not watching. As a medium, all of these things, you had this awakening experience, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So let's talk about like your life, maybe like leading up to the near death experience. Like if you could summarize that, let's start there. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so I was raised Catholic, so I grew up within that faith. And it was very interesting because at a young age, I think I was in first grade when my Sunday school teacher, my dog had died, and she said to me, "Well, your dog didn't go to heaven. Dogs don't have souls." And I remember being crushed. So there were parts of being Catholic that I loved. I loved that I had angels and saints and Mother Mary. I had all these beings of light who wanted to help me, right?
Uh-huh.
There were parts of it that felt like sandpaper on your skin, like being
Oh.
told your dog didn't have a soul.
Mhm.
So, but I was raised in it. My mom was very, very much into Catholicism. And so I just kind of went on. I remember knowing, I always felt like I had my own personal relationship with source or God or the divine. I always felt like sometimes I would watch the teachers or the priest and think, I don't think that's right. Like it feels different to me, but I wasn't seeing ghosts at the end of my bed or, all of these things that a lot of psychics or mediums will talk about. So then I turned 12 years old, and my grandfather, who I was super close with, passed away.
Mhm.
And what happened after he passed was I realized he was still talking to me and we were still in communication. So I would go tell my mom, and my mom would say, "Well, that's what you think Grandpa would say if he was still here." So I realized not everybody was still talking to Grandpa like I was. I kind of kept that relationship to myself.
Mhm.
Years later, my grandmother passed away. Same situation. She and I were still communicating. I'd share with my mom what she was saying, and my mom was kind of like, "Well, that's what you think she would say." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure she's saying this." Um, so it was trying to navigate, and let's keep in mind, this is back in the late 80s, the 90s. We don't have Google available. I've never heard the word mediumship. This is not part of my vocabulary. I just
Mhm.
know that I'm in a loving relationship with my grandparents that has continued on, and there's communication. Um,
Mhm.
and so there was no part of me that was thinking I'm a medium. Literally had not even heard that word. So as life goes on, I end up getting married, and a couple years into the marriage, this is in April of 2000, we were in the hospital because his sister was having a baby. So we were there for the day, and we were in the hospital. She was done, everything had gone well. I was in the hallway talking to her nurse, who happened to be one of my friends from high school. And I know the irony. And as I'm standing there talking to her in the hallway, I have this massive seizure. And what happens is I remember talking to her, and the next thing I know, I'm opening my eyes and I'm laying with my head in my grandma's lap. And she is the youngest, most healthy, beautiful version of her that I can remember. And I start to notice this unconditional, blissful love that permeates everything.
Mm.
And I realize that I'm in this white room, but the white room, although the walls appeared to be solid, they were actually like cells or molecules that were almost breathing and radiating this light and love. So everything was lit up from within. And as I'm laying there in this space, and I was just honestly, I was enjoying it. It was literally heaven, right?
Mm.
And so I'm laying here in this space and I look up next to my grandma and I see this 12-foot angel. And I'm really just drawn into her presence. She's so
Mhm.
much bigger than I expected. I go to look for her feather wings, and what I see are that her wings are actually made of light. They're not made of feathers. And they're kind of like the aurora borealis, like they move and they're iridescent and translucent. It was stunning. And as I'm laying there, I think to myself, I think, what is your name? And she answers me in my head. She says, my name's Madeline. I'm one of your guardian angels. And I was kind of like, oh, how did that happen? Because I also didn't know anything about telepathic communication. All of this was something that my humanness did not know.
Oh my
So
gosh.
as I'm in this beautiful, peaceful, loving, unconditional, blissful space, the next thing I know is I hear someone yelling, code, code, code. And it's like I'm dropped back into my body from a two-story building. It felt like a drop. It felt heavy. It felt dense. My arm felt like it weighed 500 pounds. And what had happened was I had actually stopped breathing during that seizure. And since I was already in the hospital, they were calling the code team.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So with that, kind of what happened was this experience was more vivid than my daily life. It
Mm.
was more real, more vivid, more it's kind of like, the difference between water and vodka. One's really strong, right? Like one's potent, and that was that heavenly realm. It was potent, it was real, it was vivid. And so I kind of come back in. They admit me to the hospital. They never figure out why I had the seizure. I'd never had one before, and I haven't had one since. But
Wow.
what this really was for me was an opening to go deeper or more into my higher self and kind of my life purpose here. And so, I learned things from that. I learned angels are real. I knew heaven knew I was coming. My grandma was right there waiting for me. I didn't know
Wow.
I was going, but she did. And so did my guardian angel. And a couple weeks later, I tried to share this experience with my mom.
1 second. There we go. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That was my mic. I was like, why is my mic not green? Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, good. Just checking. I was like, why is it orange?
Uh-huh.
About that. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So a couple weeks later, I told my mom about this experience, and my mom believed me, but
Mhm.
she had no idea how to process it. And
Mhm.
once again, this was in the year 2000. We weren't all jumping
Mm,
people looking for near-death experiences or,
right.
anything like that. So I really take this and I go back into my life as being, just newly married.
Mhm.
I am more connected to spirit. I feel like I have more information coming through, but I really don't do anything with it at this point. I just go
Mm.
back to being Michelle.
Mhm. Mhm. Gosh. Just I'm already like, wow, wow, wow. I want to say wow like 10 times. Okay. So I want to go back when you were hearing your grandparents. Were
Uh-huh.
you seeing them or just hearing them at that time?
Sometimes I would see them in dreams, and
Okay.
sometimes I would hear them. Those were
Okay.
the ways they were communicating with me. And even now, as a medium, a lot of the time the information comes through as a transmission of feelings. So I'm
Yeah.
actually translating it into words. So
Yeah.
really, spirit communicates with me energetically.
Okay. But you knew it was them because it was their voice coming
Oh,
through.
and
Yeah.
I had
Like
no
without a doubt. Yeah.
Yes, because in spirit world, it's like in our humanness, we all have an individual fingerprint. In spirit world, we all have an individual soul print. And once you know it, you're connected, and grandma will always be grandma for all of time.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Okay. So when did you feel more of this awakening around your gifts? It's like when did that happen?
Well, not soon enough, because then I had to have a second NDE.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, so by the time I have my second one, 6 years later,
Mhm.
this is in May of 2006. And at this point in my life, I have three kids, a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and an infant. And
Mm.
when I had my son, I had had many complications with him. So the following 6 weeks, I was in the hospital about 4 out of 6 weeks. And on IV antibiotics, they were going to do different procedures, like all of these things were happening. And so finally they said, we need to do a DNC. We think you've healed enough that we can do a DNC now, which is where they clear out your uterus and you'll be fine and you'll finally get to go home. And so I said, okay, outpatient procedure, 45 minutes, piece of cake, right? Very routine.
Mhm.
The night before, I had this pit in my stomach.
Mhm.
And I knew I shouldn't do it, but I really wanted to be done with being sick. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be with my baby. I wanted to be with my little kids. So what happens is I go in for surgery and I remember counting backwards for the anesthesiologist. I had had anesthesia before, and whenever I'd had it, it was just a blank. There was no dream, no vision, nothing, it was nothing for me.
Mhm.
So as I remember counting back, and the next thing I know, I look over and I see my beautiful 102-pound white German Shepherd walk through the operating door, lay her head on the gurney, look at me, and we are gone. And we are on this phenomenal beach. And on this beach, there are colors, there are smells, there are emotions that we don't have here. Everything is radiating light and love. Every drop of water, every piece of sand, every cell and molecule, it's
Wow.
unbelievable. And we are on this beach and we are just running. And I'm looking at her, and she appears to be about 2 years old, extremely healthy. We're telepathically communicating. She's so happy that I'm there. And we are just running and running. And then at some point during this run, I start to realize I'm not getting hot or tired or thirsty. The sand feels like clouds. Like I start to become even more aware, like something's different about this. The funny thing about this too is Michelle, I personally hate to run. So I tell my friends, like, if you see me running, call 911. That's emergency. That is not Michelle going for a jog. But
I'm with you.
yeah, here I am in this, this NDE running and running on the beach and loving it and so connected with my dog. So what happens while I'm on the beach with her is I can feel my son, who's 6 weeks
Mm.
old at that point, and at the house with my mom, calling to me, and I'm able to go to him. He's
Mm.
scared because he knows I'm getting ready to leave. And I remember saying to him, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to find a way to stay. And
Oh.
so I start praying and I start saying, it's not my time. I need help. Please help me. My kids still need me.
Mhm.
And at that moment, I'm transported back into the operating room. It lights up with this beautiful white light. Jesus comes in. Jesus comes in as my best friend, not as like, bow down to me, let me forgive your sins. None of that. It was like, I am here to help you. I'm your best friend ever. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in post-op, and my 45-minute procedure turned into a 3.5-hour emergency surgery because they ruptured my uterus in multiple places and missed my artery by literally 1 millimeter.
Wow. Unbelievable. What about, so your dog though had, I don't remember if you said this or not. This is a dog that had passed. This is not a dog that you currently had, correct?
Correct. She had
Oh,
passed
wow.
a couple of years prior. And so, look at the beauty in
I
that, right? In first
love
grade, I was
that. Oh,
traumatized because they said your dog didn't go to heaven. Who's the first one to greet me in this NDE? My
your
dog.
dog. And you know, and my belief is that of course we see our animals again. I don't care if you have a donkey or a horse or a cat or a dog
Or
or a
turtle,
gerbil. Yeah,
right?
I don't care. You're going to see your animals again.
Mhm.
Absolutely, we are. And I've had a lot of people ask me about that. So I love that validation that you just had.
Yeah.
Um, what do you say to people that might say to you, oh, well, Michelle, I mean, that was just a dream that you had. I mean, that happens when we're under anesthesia. People come out and say that's, that we go into a dream state and you're just dreaming of your dog. And you're dreaming of Jesus.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few things that I can say to that. So number one, I've had anesthesia multiple times before that, never had anything similar to that
Mhm.
experience. The other thing is that 3 days later, the emergency room surgeon walked into my hospital where they had to call in an emergency surgeon
Oh,
because
wow.
because the OB was not qualified to fix the damage that had been created, right?
Mhm.
The emergency surgeon comes in and says to me, Michelle, there was someone watching over you that day. Someone shouldn't have been there, or you shouldn't be here. So there was that. My medical records had been wiped. There were things missing in my medical records. So yeah, I mean, you could say Michelle was just having a good dream, but there are
Yeah.
actual things that happen in this physical world
Mhm.
that add up to being like, that was a lot more than a dream.
Yeah.
And when I got done with that surgery, then they had pushed the infection into my whole body because they had ruptured the uterus. So I'm still
Oh,
in the hospital. There was literally one day where I told my husband at the time, I said, I think I'm gonna die. Make sure you call a lawyer. I was serious. Like I was at complete peace, but I was sure I was leaving because my body was so done.
yeah.
Um, so
Wow. And
yeah.
I have a question about that. So then after that surgery, so now you're on your second near death experience. Did you feel after you got out of the hospital, because clearly you're not in the hospital, you did heal. Did you feel different in general after that?
You
Like
know,
the way you saw life, the way you experienced life, the way you interacted with your children, the whole thing.
I did. I would say I had more of an opening and connection to spirit world again. But
Hmm.
what happened after that was I had 4 months. It took me 4 months to get back to 80% functioning level. And I had a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, an infant. I was stay-at-home mom. So I really, it's like getting thrown into the deep end of the pool kind of energy there.
Yeah.
And so although I had this knowing and I knew this was real and more vivid than life and all of those things, I honestly didn't have time to process it, nor did I still know the term near death experience.
Mm. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. All right. So then move on to number three, near death
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
right. Everybody cheer for me. I finally got it on the third one, right? It's like, oh, she's gonna do this this lifetime.
Finally. Okay.
Yeah. So my third near-death experience happened on November 1st, 2011. So for people who like 111 was
Oh,
my,
yes. Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So I have 14-foot ceilings in my house, and about 12 feet off the ground, I have battery operated candles. And those candles would turn on every night for,
Mhm.
4 or 5 hours. So my younger two kids are home. At this point in my life, my kids are 5, 8, and 10.
Mhm.
And I said to my younger two, as soon as I get done putting up this candle, we're going to go get your sister from school.
Mhm.
I remember climbing to the top of the ladder. I had done this 25 times, 30 times. And as I get to the top of the ladder, I feel it start to shift. And as I feel it start to shift, I literally thought, this is going to hurt. And in the
Mhm.
moment that I thought this is going to hurt, I was absolutely ripped out of my body, not in a painful way, but in a
Mhm.
fast way. Think bungee cord, think just literally swooped out of my body.
Mhm.
And I was turned around facing my body and the ladder suspended in the air, like a freeze frame in a movie.
Mhm.
And I was standing with these three people, an Asian man, an Egyptian woman, and a Hawaiian man. And they weren't anyone that I had known in my lifetime. And yet they felt like great, great friends, family. They knew me inside out. And as
Mhm.
I'm standing with them in this blissful, timeless, unconditional loving space, watching my body in the ladder, they said to me, they said, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go?
Mm.
And at that moment, I was trying to understand how I had forever to decide because they weren't rushing me. But
Mhm.
I knew my body was going to hit the floor in a second or less.
Mhm.
And I had forever to decide. So it's in this pivotal moment where time stands still that
Mhm.
my whole life and my whole trajectory ends up changing. And as I'm looking at my body and the ladder in the air, I see this other angel come in, and this angel is dressed in a deep red and gold. And when I see this angel, I know this angel is either here to shift something so that I can stay or to take me home. Like
Mhm.
it was very clear, this is the point we're at.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, as I was kind of in that space and just kind of trying, I would say I was trying to decide. It wasn't an instant decision. I was also, once again, very blissful. So I was okay in a way with whatever happened. But then I saw my younger two kids in the kitchen. And when I saw my younger two kids right there, I said, oh, I've got to stay. And the
Mm.
minute that I make this decision, I am downloaded with a bunch of information, and they come through and they say to me, okay, but you've got to go back and you've got to do your mediumship and help people in the way that you can. Your 25-year marriage is most likely going to end in divorce.
Mm.
There's more trauma coming. It was not like, okay, rainbows and unicorns and butterflies for the rest of your
Yeah.
life. It was very upfront and clear with me that it did not mean my life was going to be easy. And yet I remember being in spirit world, and I remember being like, okay, send me in, I'm going back.
Yeah.
And so what happens is I end up falling off the ladder, and I hit the back of my head on the corner of the granite island in the kitchen. So I
Wow.
had a 5.5-inch skull fracture, a brain bleed. I lost my taste, my smell, my hearing, my equilibrium. And
Wow.
what they found was I survived that fall by 1/2 inch, because that is literally how much I missed my brainstem by.
Oh my God. Oh, so wait, I'm going back to the second NDE was a millimeter that they missed, and now we're half an inch.
Yes.
Wow.
Literally was the difference. And I knew immediately that angel had moved my head.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No doubt. How
Mhm.
long do you think you were in that? Because they always say that Earth, this is where time exists. There is no time over on the other side, is what they say. So that's interesting. You sat there and were like, you were talking to these three spiritual beings for a while, or were they
Yeah.
giving you advice, or what were they saying?
Yeah. So, some of the information I still don't remember to this day. It gets revealed as time goes on, is
Hmm.
because it was such a huge download. It's kind of, I'm going through my computer files, and oh, and then there's that one and that one.
Uh,
It kind of pops up sometimes. I felt like I was with them for a good period of time. But
mhm.
what I know, because of the timing of the fall, and I'll get into this with you too, it really was just seconds.
Yeah.
Um,
Seconds in Earth time, but
yes,
it could have been an hour or more on the other side.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so then I end up falling, having all of the damage that we talked about. And I end up, my kids call 911. I get to the hospital, I'm in ICU, and then it's a lot.
Mhm.
So what happens then in January of 2012, my son Josh was 5 at the time, and he started getting depressed because he had tried to call 911 and his call didn't go through. My daughter Sophie's call had gone through.
Mm.
So he would tell me, my mom, my mother-in-law at the time, anyone who could listen or hear him, he would say, I didn't do anything to help my mom. I didn't need to
Oh.
be there. And we would say, but Josh, you opened the door for the policeman when he got here. And it was just this huge weight on him. So in the end of January 2012, my grandfather, who passed away when I was 12 years old,
Mhm.
comes through to me in a massive visit, and he talks to me about my accident and my injury and my son. He and my son never walked this earth at the same time. And he says to me, you need to get the 911 recording. There's something on there you should know. I don't even know I could get the 911 recording. So
Wow.
I go order it. It comes in a couple weeks later. I play it, and I hear them say, 911, what's your emergency? And in his little broken voice, my son Josh says, Sophie, what do I say? He
Oh.
laid the phone down. So he had called right when the trauma happened, and it was so traumatizing. He had actually not been able to realize his call went through. So for the next minute and a half, you can hear the operators trying to get the kid's attention. And then he says he's going to go push the panic alarm button. And she says, hold on, let me try calling 911. And then her call goes through.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that you can get the recording either. I
Yeah.
mean, oh
I
my
had no
gosh.
idea. And so then when my son came home from kindergarten that day, I literally said to him, I said, Josh, help was coming. Your call went through. And it was like I had lifted this 10,000-pound weight off this little boy's
Oh,
shoulders. And what I realized then, because I was still so much in the physical trauma, the traumatic brain injury,
yeah.
everything that I was moving through, so I really hadn't had time once again to think about or process or know that I had an NDE or anything along those lines. It was literally all I could do to get down the hall. And I remember saying to him, help was coming, and the weight that it lifted off of him. And then I started to remember more and more about this near-death experience, and that I had said I would do my mediumship, and that this was profound. Like there was nothing that could have come through to change someone's life that I love more. And so I still had a lot of recovery to do. But what happened from there is then the messages would start coming in harder, stronger, faster. I had no control over them for a while. And so I went to a counselor, and I said, all right, I think I need your help. Something's wrong. I'm talking to dead people. And she looked at me, as spirit would have it, she looks at me and says, what a gift. Let's get you a mentor.
Oh,
So, truly divinely led to the right people at the right time.
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful story. Okay, so after this point in time, you've healed, you have a mentor now, and does your life then start to radically change? Because I'm thinking about like, okay, you have your mom, this is the lovely Catholic woman.
Mhm.
What is she saying when you say, Mom, I'm talking to dead people like I told you way back when I was talking to grandma and grandpa?
Right. So at this point in my life, my mom is terminally ill with cancer.
Oh,
And at I will be honest, that fueled my fire for mediumship, and she knew it, and she
yeah.
wanted it to be real and true,
Mhm.
and that we would still be able to communicate.
Mhm.
So my mom, who was still maybe skeptical, couldn't have rooted for me harder, because she was in a point in her life where it was so important for her to know that our connection and love would go on. She
Mm.
kind of gets on my team, and she actually helps me pay for my mentoring. So when I start to get mentored, that's when the division in my marriage starts. So my
Mhm.
husband at the time was not okay with that. He was actually very Christian, and not okay with that.
With you
And
being a when you say that, you mean with you being a
yes,
medium.
with me getting mentored to dive into
Okay.
this more.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and so he started having challenges. So I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have income of my own. So my mom actually is the one who stepped up and started paying for my mentor so that I could follow through with this.
Wow. So then
Hmm.
how long was that from that time till you really became, full time or started being able to make income from this?
Yeah, so I started mentoring, I believe, in 2013.
Hmm.
Um, and I went into business in 2017, but it took a while to grow.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing any advertising. I'd do readings when my kids were in school.
Hmm.
So it really took a while to
Hmm.
grow into full time, but I've been doing this full time now for probably 3 years, 4 years.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you've spent a lot of time then speaking with the other side.
Mhm.
Something I'd love to talk about would be a soul plan. Because I'm listening to you say, so when you were on one of your NDEs, the last one is when they said to you, if you go back, your marriage is going to dissolve. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. Da 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 da. And a lot of people would say, well, then why would you come back? So talk about why. Let's talk about soul plans, but also, and I've had this conversation with people for probably most of my life, honestly, because I really do believe we have a soul plan, but not one plan. I don't think the soul cares if you're having, turkey or you're plant-based. Like it's like so it's much broader than that, but people always say, "Well, you really think I'd pick this really bad plan? Do you really think I'd pick a divorce? Do you really think I'd pick that my child would be sick or something like that?" So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what I know from the work I've done, and then just from so vividly knowing what happened to me with this near-death experience,
Hmm.
the reason that we would pick these challenges is because for our soul, when we are in this heavenly realm where everything is perfect, our soul can't learn and grow and evolve the way that we want it to. So we have to pick places and situations that have contrast so that we can really grow. It's like the diamond in the rough, and every
Hmm.
lifetime polishes you more. So you're getting closer to your pure brilliance, right? And
Hmm.
so, with that being said, we really come here for the experience and the contrast. Now, our soul knows we're eternal. So in that scope of eternity, if you live to be 100 in this human plane, it's the blink of an eye, right?
Hmm.
And so it's really about the growth. And I want to say this, all things really do stem from love. And so even the fact that I would choose whatever trauma or someone else would, our soul knows that this is an illusion and that we're high-fiving each other in heaven. Hey, good game, nice job. I finally got that lesson I wanted to learn. And so, because of that, our souls are not afraid to come in. Also, our souls are powerful and whole. It's our humanness that gets in a little bit of a challenging situation at times.
Yeah, I've heard before, and you might agree with this, or maybe you've said this, I don't know, but that our souls are lining up, especially right now, to come into this, like they want to be here. Can you talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about that? Like, even though it's a hard planet, it's hard to live here, right?
Mhm.
With so much deep contrast, right? So,
Right.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a lot of times I think of planet Earth as kind of like the leading edge because we have contrast everywhere. If you don't believe it, turn on your TV, drive down the freeway. I mean, you're going to see at least 10 examples of contrast
That's
in
true.
about 5 minutes.
That
Um,
is so true.
so what happens is there are truly souls that are lined up to get here. And what I want to say by that is also this: no one is here by accident.
Mhm.
Everyone who is here on this planet chose to come here. And I know you're saying, why would I choose this? Because you want to learn and grow and evolve more. When we're in that heavenly realm, I want everyone to think of their favorite vacation spot. Okay, whatever that is, the most perfect place. After 200 years there, are you going to be like, is there a new restaurant? Is there a new spot on the beach? Can I go try something else? Right.
So true.
And
I'm
that,
bored. We'd say I'm bored. I'm bored with all these places. Yeah. I want something new and fresh.
yes. And so that is also the energy that drives our souls to come explore planet Earth. Um,
Okay.
but with that being said, no one's here by accident. Everyone has chosen to come here on a soul level, and we have chosen in a large part the contrast. Now, I just put out a course on this about soul agreements, and
Mhm.
so it's actually on my website if anyone wants to check it out. But what it really is what we know, or what I know from what Spirit has led me, is that about 60 to 70% of our life is kind of in that blueprint and solid. So let's think about your house, the structure of where you live. It's solid, but guess what? You get to do the interior designing. You can add an outlet. You can rip up the floor and lay new tile. There are things we can do. And this really is like our soul plan. So we come in, and I obviously in mindset, I want to be a medium. I want to be able to serve in the way that I can serve. And those things are important, but then I still have my free will, which is how am I going to design that?
Mhm. Okay. So, because I can hear the audience, a lot of
Mhm.
people would be saying, because people have asked me this when I've said the same thing. We choose our lifetimes. Well, why would I choose these parents? Why would I choose this trauma? So if you were here to be a medium, I would ask you this, then why did you choose a husband that was Christian that then you'd have to divorce when you have your three children? And I'm just being the devil's advocate here. Okay.
That's a perfect question.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair question. But what I love about that is we're saying, even though I've chosen the spiritual path, it didn't mean my life was without contrast and pain.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's the human existence.
Yeah.
You get not that it's supposed to be painful and all of that, but the human existence is there's contrast here. So that's a great question. Why would Michelle have chosen that? Why would I have chosen that? Because if the goal for my soul was to learn and to stand in my power, no matter
Mhm.
who is standing in front of me,
Yeah.
then the fact that I could step into who I was with a man that I had been married to for 25 years
Mhm.
against his resistance and dislike of what I did would actually lead my soul into a part of being almost unstoppable, because I could say that, and in that heavenly realm, he and I are best friends. And he said, I'm
Mhm.
going to come in and I'm going to be against all of this that you do, but you're going to grow because you're going to choose you.
A book that I read whenever it came out. Did you ever read Neil Donald Walsh's book, the children's book, The Little Soul in the Sun?
I haven't read that one.
Michelle, I had that book on my bookshelf when I had a private practice. I would give it to so many clients when they would say to me, why did I choose this, whatever, again, more air quotes, bad thing, whether it be my mom is a narcissist or my husband's leaving or whatever it might be. And I'd say, read this book. And in this book, it's a beautiful, it's actually a children's book, but I'd give it to my adult clients and they would they'd bring it back the next week and tears, like this resonated so deeply. But they would say, there are pictures in the book of these souls saying, making the agreements before we come in and say, hey, I'll be the one that helps you to be strong, to use you as an example, right? I'll be the one that's going to help you step into your power, shine your light, be a light worker all the way around the world. But I'm going to be your husband and then I'm going to leave. And you're going to have to stand up on your own. And over there, before you came in, you said, oh my gosh, thank you. And then he probably said, because I love you this much, I'm going to do this for you.
Absolutely.
It's anyway, I'll put it in the show notes. The Little Soul in the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh. Beautiful book. And it's broken down so simply. When you read it, I found that most people really deeply resonated with it. So it's almost stepping out of that like I don't like to use this. I'm not going to use this word. Like we want to look for what's the word I want, Michelle? It's not a blessing. It's like, where's the good that could
Silver
happen?
lining.
The silver lining. Thank you. Thank you. So we can either get stuck on the opposite end. What would be the opposite of looking at something through the lens of a silver lining?
Right. Yeah.
Not good. Okay.
Right.
So I can either sit here and go, well, this is just horrible. And I don't like that this has happened to me. And why would this happen? Why is God doing this? All of this stuff. And it's like, wait, wait, wait. How could I see this in a different way? And that's where we start to bring our power in and then really see our life through totally a different lens completely. So I'm hearing that you did that. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, okay. Let's talk for a minute about suicide. You have direct experience with suicide. I'd love to hear your story
Yeah.
if you could share that.
Right. So that is more of the trauma that I experienced after my third near-death experience. So I went through a tough divorce, and what happened was I actually fell in love again, and I literally had felt loved in a way that I had never felt in my marriage or in my life previous to that. And we were planning our future. He was blending in great with my family. Like it was so easy. And then I knew he had depression. And so there had been a couple periods of time where he had just had to go to his place, turn off his phone, turn off his computer, sleep for a
Mhm.
couple of days, and kind of rebound out of that. And what happened was I was actually out of town. And while I was gone, he had transitioned by suicide.
Mm,
And so I didn't know. I was texting him. I had actually spoken to him that morning. And then I was texting him from the airport, and he wasn't responding. And I thought, well, maybe he's at work with a client. The next day I called him, everything, called his work. They said he'd called in sick. So I said, oh, okay, he's,
mm,
having a minute. His
mhm,
daughter, who was in college, didn't want to meet me. So I drove by his house. Both their cars were there. I said, okay, he's okay. She's home. He's home.
mhm,
And so the next day I go to this party we were going to go to, and everybody asked where he was. And I said, I think he's just having a hard time right now.
mhm, mhm.
And I go home from that party that night, and it's around midnight, and I'm in my bathroom and I'm starting to get ready for bed. And I actually feel him come in behind me.
Oh, wow.
And he says to me, "You sure are beautiful," because he would always say that. And I start like almost losing control of my body, because I know this is mediumship, and
Yeah.
I want to be doing mediumship with him. And
Yeah.
he said to me, he said, "I wanted to be the one to tell you." And
Oh,
so somehow I make it to my bed, and I feel him lay down behind me and put his arm over me. And that was actually how I found out that he had transitioned by suicide. So I texted his sister, and 4 hours later, I got a text from her saying, yeah, he had taken his life.
oh, God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And so when we talk about our soul plan and we talk about like, why would I ever agree to that? So first of all, I don't believe in all my connection with spirit that suicide is ever our cemented option in leaving. I don't. Our
Mhm,
soul
mhm,
comes here to really play and learn and grow, but we know we're going to take on a challenging lifetime.
mhm,
That
mhm,
was a free will choice that he made. It didn't have to end that way. That was not his life plan.
mhm,
Um, but what I will say about that is, when I asked spirit, I said, because I've actually had clients who have said to me, oh, my loved one's higher self commanded them or demanded that they take their life by suicide in that moment.
mhm.
I said to spirit, I said, help me with this. Like, give me some clarity on this. And they said, Michelle, if your higher self or your soul said it's time to go home, you would have a massive stroke, an
Right.
aneurysm, a heart
A
attack.
heart attack,
Like
something. Yeah.
your soul knows how to leave your body
Yeah.
without leaving the trauma of suicide behind it.
Mhm,
And so when I really dove into my soul plan with him, what I found was that at my point in life, he literally said to me, I'm going to come in and love you in a way that you have never felt love before. And I will try to stay longer to be here for you. And my soul agreement with him was that, and I will make you feel so loved and lovable, because he had never felt that way.
wow.
And
Uh-huh.
yet you say, why would I choose that trauma? We choose these traumas for our love and growth. And also it didn't have to be that way, but he and I are still in a connection, right? That connection continues on.
Mhm. So I just want to make sure I heard you clearly. So when someone commits suicide, like you said, we can leave via heart attack, something not so traumatic. So he didn't choose to leave. So here's the question: did he choose to leave at that time, or could he have stayed longer?
He
Because
could.
also because we can't die by mistake either. So I'm curious, like, could he have said, "Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I want to go back." Kind of like you just said, "I want to go back. My son needs me." Right?
Right. Right. And that's a great question. And I actually, those answers were shown to me in my second near death experience. So there
Mhm.
are at least three levels that I'm aware of that life is able to continue on. Number one, can the body sustain it? He transitioned in a
Mm,
way where the vessel could no longer sustain life. The
got it.
second level of that is going to be, does this lifeline or timeline need to continue? So if it does need to continue, and this person goes home, are there friends, family,
Mhm.
siblings who will step in and carry it? And then that third level that I'm aware of is it's literally between the soul and source. But what happened, the way that he chose to transition, the vessel could no longer sustain life, period.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it doesn't matter if you
Mhm.
were supposed to be here longer or not.
Mhm. And some of our religious beliefs, because people have asked me about this too, but like, well, if someone commits suicide, do they go to heaven? In the Catholic faith, they might say they go to purgatory, they're going to hell. Like, what is your experience with that?
Yeah, so my understanding and what I know is that they go to heaven.
Hmm.
I like to tell people, think of it as like high school graduation, right? You can drop out of high school, but still show up at the graduation parties and at the ceremony. You just don't get your diploma.
Right.
That's the energy around suicide. So he's going to probably come back in. He's going to want to learn the lessons that he didn't complete in this lifetime and probably choose an easier way to do it or something that will work better with him. So it's not that they don't go home and they're not surrounded by love and light and comfort immediately. They absolutely are, but they didn't get the diploma.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Awesome. Ooh, this was so good. I want to see if I have any other questions. Let me ask you just a couple more questions before I let you go. Um, do we all have the ability to start communicating with our own spirit guides, angels, teachers, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. And so actually, I'm glad you said that. I have a class coming out, a 5-week course in October that's live, and we're going to do it online to teach people how to do this for themselves.
I love it.
Because this is an ability that we all have.
Mhm,
I like to say, think of it like math. So everyone can do basic math, right? You can add
mhm.
and subtract to your checkbook. Some people will become physicists with that level of math. I will never be a physicist, but I can do what I need to do. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And so this is a muscle or an ability. It's our natural communication right with our soul, right?
Mhm,
And so we all have this, and there are things we can do to hone in on it, grow it, strengthen it. It doesn't mean we're all going to be working as professional psychic mediums,
mhm,
but your connection is absolutely direct to source, your guides, your angels, and your loved ones.
mhm. Okay, great. I love that you have a course coming up in this. Is there something that we can do today? Can you give us any kind of tip today that would help us to know that we are connected with our angels and guides or whoever teachers that are around us?
Yeah, I would say start asking for a sign and
Mhm,
stop seeing life as coincidence.
mhm.
There really isn't coincidence in this lifetime. And
Exactly.
a lot of times I say, spirit speaks to us through people all the time. If you hear something at work and then you hear it at home and then your best friend says it to you, pay attention. That is spirit talking through 3 different human vessels to you saying, you need to do this, go here, whatever that message is. So be open to that. But I would also say, very often in our human form, we want to literally hear it, or we want it written out. We want it black and white. We want the billboard that says, Michelle, do this, love mom from heaven, right?
Mhm.
But
So true.
That's not really how spirit works. It's a
Right.
different form of communication. So trust the whispers, the
Mhm.
nudges. Very often, spirit is gently tapping us on the shoulder,
Mhm.
not really like shoving us. And we want to feel it as a shove, but we have to tune in. We have to be mindful.
And I would even I've said the same thing to people because they go, "Well, I've been praying about this." I'm like, "Well, do you think Jesus, your angels, like whomever's going to show up at your front door and ring the doorbell, like, are you paying attention? Like, pay attention because, like you said, someone could say something. Listen to the radio. Like, is it one phrase, on in that song, keep repeating in your head? That's a sign. Are you seeing a cardinal? Are you seeing a hawk that keeps flying over your head? Are the clock going 11 11 1 1 1 2 2 2? It's like that's all the messages we need to be paying attention, and those are messages from beyond. So it, like you said, I always say the same thing. There are no coincidences.
Right, right. And it's like the AM station. It's playing right now. You and I just aren't tuned in and listening to it.
It
World
is
is
like the AM
always
station.
playing, right? Spirit world is always playing. We got to tune in. We got to find that tuner and tune in because we're not listening to it right now, but those messages on that airway are flying by both of us right now.
Do you think that meditation is helpful for people in order to connect more deeply with their spiritual beings around them, or is it even necessary?
So, here's the thing. I think it's helpful if you can do it, but I have a lot of clients that are challenged with that. So,
Mhm.
in those ways, I like to say to them, okay, where do you get your ahas? Is it a hot shower? Is it driving the car, going for a run, planting in your garden? Go to the places that you feel connected to source and that you get your aha moments or your inspiration. That's your meditation place. And if you can
Yeah.
do it in silence in a chair, great. And if you need movement to distract your body from kind of hijacking what you're supposed to be hearing or knowing, then do it.
I love that. I know because when I'm doing like a live event on stage, holy moly, the stuff just comes through. I'm not even thinking, and it's just bam, bam, bam. So
You
thank you for
know,
saying that.
yeah,
Huh?
you're
Yeah.
channeling it. And so,
Yeah.
and that's what I like to say too, like sports athletes, when they are out there on the court or on the field doing what they do best,
Mhm.
they are totally in flow with source. So it looks
Mhm.
different. Like we think we're all supposed to look like, yogis and sit there and meditate for 3 hours or whatever that is. And that works great for some people. So do it if it works for you. But that is not how we have 8 billion people here. We have 8 billion different connections to source and
Right.
8 billion different ways to get there.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, my darling, tell us, where would people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me easiest on my website, michelleclare.net. And
Okay.
there's my upcoming events. You can book an individual reading. I do most of my readings are on Zoom now, so I get to have clients around the world. I
Love
have
that.
online events too that people can join. So
Perfect. I'm writing it down for show notes. So I will have that in show notes, everybody. Um, Thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you for taking the time today. What a wonderful, wonderful conversation this was. I really appreciate your time today.
I really appreciate you, and this has been a great conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you.